In my previous video, I showcased 4 Lunalight variants, namely Shaddoll, Thunder Dragon, Raid Raptor, and even Ryzeal. But just when you thought the deck couldn't get any better, another variant appeared over the weekend, and man does it look like the best of the bunch. So let's take a look at Branded Lunalight. So the list you see on your screen is an adapted version of Yugioh's 43 card build that he took to YCS Bologna and was able to finish 9th with. Now it's a little unfortunate that he finished 9th. Now don't get me wrong, 9th is incredible at an event that had 2,400 players, but if he had made the top cut, I think this is the deck that everyone would have been talking about instead of Vanquish Soul. So there's a lot to like about this deck, and I think it might just be the best version of Lunalight, which I'll get into in a bit. But for now, for my build kind of differs from his because I play a 41 card list which has 13 starters as opposed to 11 starters, and then it has, I believe, 13 non-engine slots. What I like about the branded variant is that unlike other Lunalight variants which try to throw in a bunch of bricks into the deck to make the end board stronger than it already is, the branded version kind of takes the opposite of approach. So yes, it is still playing the brick in the one Albaz, but instead of it trying to reinforce or bolster your end board, it tries to get to the end board in more ways than before. So like I said, there's 13 starters, and the 2 branded fusions kind of act as copies 14 and, well, 12 and 13. Which is pretty good. In addition to that, it also adds a bunch of utility tools that help the deck go in second. So even though we're playing less non-engine, you don't really miss it too much. Of course, the compromise is that we have to then consume 3 of our extra deck spots to make space for the branded package, but you're not going to miss this too much considering that we took out the non-essentials essentially. So for now, I'm going to get into the list and we'll talk about some of the card choices that I have and just some of the, especially the extra deck and the side deck, so we'll get into that in a second. For starters, we have 3 Yugioh and 3 Masquerade, which is pretty standard in most Lunalight builds, although I'm starting to see a few versions of the deck which are cutting the Masquerade to 2, which feels a little greedy in my opinion because it's just such a great starter. I guess the logic is that they can kind of search it off Lunalight, Yellow Marten, and to me this just feels wrong because you generally don't want to be leading with Yellow Marten because it just plays into draw so badly. And we're then playing the 1 copy of Foolish Barrel, which is essentially a 4th copy of Masquerade, but not exactly because it doesn't have the secondary effect. Now, something that has changed is that we're playing 2 Tenki and 2 Fractal instead of 3 and 1. And the reason for this is because we can kind of search the 2nd copy of Tenki off of the Dragon that devours the Dogma. So 2 copies are kind of necessary. It also acts as extension during the later turns because we are playing 2 Silver Hounds like a sane person would. And then for the branded package, we of course are playing 2 Branded Fusion and the 1 Albaz. Branded Fusion is a starter. It's not a starter in the conventional sense because it does lower the ceiling of your end board, which we'll see when we get into the replays, but it is a starter, and that is exactly everything that you kind of want in the situation, right? Well, in most situations, you just want to see ways to play as much as possible, and this fulfills that requirement, and it's just absolutely great. Then for extenders, we're playing 9. I'm using the word extender loosely because these cards aren't extenders in the conventional sense. They're kind of situational, but the cool thing about this deck, as I've said a number of times, is that as long as you're playing the 1 Emerald Bird in your deck, which can be a pseudo starter, but it's also somewhat of a pseudo brick, you turn every slot in your deck that isn't Yugioh and Fractal into extenders. So these can all be extenders, and even the Fractal can be extended without using the Emerald Bird. You would then obviously just send the Silver Hound to the graveyard, but that's kind of the cool thing. So we have the 9 dedicated extenders, and then every other slot that we draw that we don't use to lead our plays can be used as an extender later on. So we're playing 2 Perfume, 2 Black Sheep. You kind of need to play 2, unfortunately. It does help you play through hand traps a bit better. And again, I'm calling them pseudo extenders because if you open a starter plus one of these or any of these 9, you probably can extend your plays through that hand trap. So 1 Yellow Marten, 1 Tiger, 1 Wolf, 1 Polymerization, and 1 Lunar Fusion. Yes, these 2 are part of your extension package because like I said, if you draw this in addition to a starter, you can probably make something happen. And then you have 5 engine pieces, probably 6 if you count the Albaz, but you'll have your 2 Kaleido Chick, your 2 Silver Hound, and the 1 Emerald Bird, which can kind of be engine, assuming what else you draw it with. For non-engine, we're playing 13, we're playing the 3 Imperm, which I don't exactly like, but you kind of need to because Spellcast is in the format, and you are playing a deck that is playing 19 spells, 21 if you count your personal monsters, so you kind of want to have some way of stopping that as much as possible, and it becomes a necessary evil in the deck, if you want to call it that. It also has some application against the mirror match and against some matchups, but it's just not enough by itself. And then 3 Warlocks, which is pretty standard, and 2 Thrust and 1 Talent. I'm playing this in the main because we are still in a turn 0 format. I mean, K9 just shown that it's still pretty good. And we are playing 41, so you don't want to brick on too many thrusts, so 2 is fine. we have basically as many copies of outs as they have Isna. In fact, we have double that because we can use the Fallen the Virtuous to stop the loopers from overlaying. So yeah, speaking of which, Fallen the Virtuous is treated as both, well, as a non-engine because it can kind of be used to clear the board of something and then reset itself, well, reset another copy via the Albion Dragon. It's also what we use to play through Imperm now that we no longer playing the Book of Eclipse. And yeah, it's pretty versatile. Moving on, we're obviously playing the one talent to beat a lot of decks. Like, if you get hand trapped and you talent to look at your opponent's hand, you're probably going to win, but you can also use it to kind of take whatever rank 5 the Canaan players will summon during your turn. One copy of Heavy Poly because I only own one, and I don't think you really need to play more than this in the main deck, especially if you're playing Thrust. It can be a bit bricky otherwise, and Thrust gets you there, because generally speaking, you want to activate this towards the end of your combo. When going second, you kind of want to bait everything that your opponent has on the board, and then you'll activate either the Thrust to get it or it directly to then make the Liger. So one's fine, two would be better, but you can make do it one. In the extra deck, we have 3 branded monsters. We have the Albion, which I kind of mentioned as part of the Fallen the Virtuous package. So we generally use the Fallen the Virtuous, send the Albion, and then during the end phase, we'll set it a second copy of the Fallen the Virtuous so that we still have another piece of removal during our opponent's turn. It's also somewhat of an Albaz target. Like if you summon Albaz and your opponent has a light monster, you can then contact Fuse. So the light is, so it is very versatile. Of course, most of the time we'll be using it off the Fallen the Virtuous because we have another target for Albaz, and that is the Dragon that devours the Dogma, which can be used by Contact Fusion in Albaz, a lighter dark monster, and effect monster. I'm saying Contact Fusion, but we're basically using Albaz as a super poly effect to kind of get rid of monsters on both sides of the field. The cool thing about this, as I've said, is that if this is sent to the graveyard, we can add a Tri-Brigade from our deck to hand during the end phase. So this also doubles as an alternative target for Fallen the Virtuous in some situations. So the way it would normally go is you Fallen the Virtuous, pop something during your turn, assuming you're playing against like Canaan, turn 0. You'll then set one during the end phase, and then via the Albion, and then during your opponent's turn, after you've popped something again, you would send the Dragon that devours the Dogma, and then during your end phase, you'll search for the Tri-Brigade, and you've already got extension for your playing. We're playing the one Rim, which is for our target for Branded Fusion. Well, this is normally what we'll be summoning because it just requires you to fusion Branded of Fallen of Albaz plus 1 Beast Warrior, which our entire deck happens to be. And it's also probably kind of good to keep on that field because it is a extra monster negate. It also is a non-targeting monster bounce, which is pretty good in a format where Lupus is running everywhere. It also got the nice grave effects. If your opponent does out it, you can then use it to summon out the Albaz from grave to start your Contact Fusion play. So incredibly good. I think the best one in the deck, so there's no reason to play Merjade, just play this instead. Then in the Lunalight package, it is somewhat condensed. I've had to cut the Saber Dancer to make space for the branded package, and you're not going to miss it too much because most of the time Saber Dancer was just to beat over monsters that were bigger than Liger, which there seems to be few in this format, so you'll be fine. So we're playing 2 Leo Dancer, 2 Liger Dancer, 1 Panther Dancer because we still need it as a heavy poly target to make it, well, as a heavy poly material to make the Leo Dancer in hand, so it doesn't have enough material to make the Liger. And then we're playing the 2 Perfume Dancer, which is kind of standard. You need 1 for your turn and then 1 for your opponent's turn, but most of the time we're just fusing both copies off of Heavy Poly because I rarely make 2 of these in a game. It's either being sent to the graveyard for Liger's effect or as part of material for Heavy Poly. In links, we've had to cut both the IP and the Almirage for the branded package. You're not going to miss this too much, but we are playing the 1 SP and the 1 Cross Sheep. This is for extension and this is part of your endboard. Then we're playing the 3 necessary XCs. So we're playing Baguska, which is a part of your endboard. Tiger King, which is part of your combo. It can also be used when going second to sort of dark rule your opponent's board. So it does have an effect where you detach and then you negate everything on field that isn't a Beast Warrior. And then we're playing the 1 Dugaris, which we mainly use to extend through a roll. Whilst looking at the extra deck, I am playing 3 Ash Blossom and 1 Call By and 1 Black Earth Loss. So these 5 will generally come in when I'm going first. I will generally side out the 3-4 loss for the 3 Ash Blossom, and then these 2 will be some combination of hand traps, so well, of non-engine. So we'll probably take out the heavy poly for one of these, and then whatever the matchup requires will be the Blackwood Loss, which we can kind of use as an offensive target off of Thrust. So should we get hand trapped in our turn, we can set this to disrupt our opponents in addition to our endboard. So we obviously don't have things like Dimension Barrier anymore, so this is still pretty good alternative. It's a pretty good alternative, and if we hard draw it, it's not the end of the world because then we can discard it off our Yugioh and then we have the Grave Effect ready for our opponent's turn. As for Ash Blossom, it's just very versatile. I know this deck doesn't really lose to Charmies because you're just going to play through and your opponent either has an out to the Liger or they don't. So but what it does do is kind of limits the chances of your opponent drawing it out if you play through Charmies, and it also does really well against protecting the other pieces of your endboard, like your Baguska. You can use this to protect it from something like a Book of Eclipse. It's very versatile. You also want to play it for Mitsurugi, which you have to respect because that's been good since it's just released in the format, and this is kind of one of the ways that you can stymie their plays a bit more than you would with another hand trap. And speaking of breakers, or moving on to the breakers, we're playing quite a few. So we're playing the 2 Dark Hole. This is a bit of a weird one, but I feel as though you need it because people are playing Branded again. Okay, we haven't seen Branded do 2 out of YCS, but you still need to respect the Idol statue, and this is one of the ways in which you can search and out to it. So the play is that they summon the Idol statue during your turn, you can thrust and then use the Dark Hole to clear it from your side of the field. You know, we're no longer playing the Book of Eclipse, so basically we have the 2 Dark Hole and the 3 Fallen of the Virtues as our dedicated outs to the Idol statue. We're then playing Lightning Storm and Harpy's Feather Duster to respect back row. And then for another 3 breakers, we're playing the Dark Rune more because this is just very good against Yami. I know Yami isn't exactly winning events, but it's consistently in the top 8, and you know, I think it's placed second at the last 2 YCS, so it is something that you have to respect. And of course we get maximum value of this with the thrust, so if I'm playing against something that the Imperm isn't doing too well against, I will probably side in the 3 Dark Rulers in over the 3 Imperms. And then lastly, I'm playing 3 Malchami Purulia. I'm going to call this card cheap, but it's not really. It's just more accessible now that it was reprinted in the structure decks. So a lot of people have access to this, and it is, I think, your second best Malchami that you want to use. And you kind of need to play to respect Vanquish Soul, which is now back in the format. It's also good against Yami, it's good against White Forest. So it is a nice blanket to kind of say, to kind of round out the extra deck, and it's predominantly there to kind of help you find your board breakers when going second. Even better if it helps you find a heavy pot. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at the combo. For the Branded combo, you'll need to open up Branded Fusion plus a discard. So we'll lead off by activating the Branded Fusion, and you want to summon out the Room, and you obviously want to send your Elbaz to the graveyard as well as the Silverhound. We're sending the Silverhound to kind of play through Duel, but I'll show you the Yellow Marten line in a bit. So we'll send through those, and we'll then summon the Room to our side of the field. We can summon it to our extra monster zone because we won't be able to link or XC summon this turn because we use the Branded Fusion. So even though we're in a position where we essentially Foolish Burial the Silverhound, and it should just be full Lunaligh combo from there, things do change a bit because we need to play through this restriction. So we'll then use the effect of Silverhound, and you want to summon out Yugioh to your side of the field. You'll activate the effect to search for Collider Chick, and then you want to discard whatever your discard was in hand. You'll normal summon Collider Chick to your side of the field. You'll use its effect to send Black Sheep to the graveyard. Activate Yugioh's effect to add the Black Sheep from grave to hand. Activate Black Sheep's effect to search for polymerization. You then want to make a Perfume Dancer by fusing your 2 Lunalights on field. In this case, I think it's safer to summon your Perfume Dancer to one of the zones on the end of the field, just because if your opponent does out the room, of course it does give us more plays with the Elbaz that's already in graveyard, but we don't want it to be exposed to Anima because it'll probably still be on our field. So we'll now use its effect as Chain Link 1, and then we'll Chain Block with the Collider Chick to add polymerization from grave to hand. We'll add the Perfume to hand, and you want to activate Perfume to summon back out the Collider Chick from grave. You'll use the effect of Collider Chick to send Leo Dancer from the extra deck to the graveyard, and then you want to activate the effect of Perfume Dancer to reset the Collider Chick. So we'll special summon the Collider Chick to our side of the field, and from this position, there's 2 targets you can want to send from your deck, or one of 2. So if you suspect your opponent's on a Bastille, you want to send the second copy of Leo Dancer, because if they banish the one from grave, you could be in a bit of a difficult situation. Although we still have the Collider Chick on the field, which is treated as the Leo Dancer. Oh, it's no longer because we reset it. So you do want to send the second copy of your Leo Dancer to the graveyard if you suspect your opponent's on a Bastille. However, if you suspect they're on Ghost Bell, you want to send a Yellow Marten. I think Bell is more common in this format because people are playing it for Mitsurugi. So if I'm going into things a bit blindly, I would then send the Yellow Marten to graveyard. So just in case when we get to the Wolf, when our opponent, should they bell it, we can then reset it with the Yellow Marten and then activate its effect again to fusion summon out at least one Lycos outside of the field. So I think those 2 are the safest. Of course, if your opponent does have a Bastille and they Bastille your Leo Dancer, now you will be in a shit position. So we'll activate the Wolf, and you want to activate Wolf's effect to fusion summon out Liger. So in this scenario, I kind of want to keep the Perfume Dance on the field because it kind of does more for us from this position. So I'll be banishing out the Collider Chick, the Leo Dancer, the Black Sheep, and the Yugioh from graveyard because it doesn't really do too much. So we've kept the 2 Lunalights with grave effects in the graveyard. And then from here, you'll summon out your Liger Dancer either to the Anima Zone because your opponent won't be able to steal it either anyway, or you can put it to the end. I think putting it to the Anima Zone is kind of tempting because it opens up the field to your opponent misplaying, and I guess that can be kind of funny. So this is what the endboard looks like through the Branded Fusion line. It isn't as impressive as some of the stuff I showed you because you can, as a 1.5 card combo, you can only end on 1 Liger, and the Perfume isn't doing too much on your side of the field. But that's okay because we still have managed to get to the Liger, which is your win con, and we have the Rinbrum, which is an extra monster negate, a non-targeting monster bounce, and if it goes to the graveyard, we can quick effect, special summon the Albaz from our graveyard and then contact views our opponent's board. Or we would need another card in hand, but this would assume that we have because considering you open 5 cards when you start in your turn. So I kind of like this. So why I kind of said I like this against K9 is for the reason that this can just negate whatever rank 5 your opponent tries to summon to this side of the field. So a lot of times they will try to summon out the Nash Knight to use its effect to get the Collider Chick off your side of the field and attach as material. This can usually put Lunalight in a very bad situation if you don't have the right extenders, but with the Branded Fusion line you can just negate that, and then yeah, you can also then just return it back to the extra deck. So you negate, return it to the extra deck, your Collider Chick's still on the field, and you're in a good position to combo through. The fact that it also non-targeting bounces is cool because it bypasses the Lupus's protection. It also has less than 3000 attack, so if your opponent makes a Typhon, you can get rid of it. So it does a lot of cool things. It's obviously not as great as I'd like it to be, but we do what we have. The Silverhound in the grave is not live, but that does become live as soon as we use Liger's effect. So unfortunately we can't use it at the start of our turn. We'll probably only be able to use it during the main phase 2 because you're generally using Liger's effect when your opponent summons 4 monsters to their side of the field or when they go to battle phase. So this is the end board, and let's see what else we can do with it. So like I mentioned, there are some slight differences between the way you start with your Branded Fusion. Like if you send the Yellow Monster instead of the Silverhound, things change slightly. So I'll show you what that line looks like so you guys can decide if it's worth risking playing through Droll for. So we'll activate the Branded Fusion as last time. You want to summon out the Rinbrum, and you want to send Yellow Martin and Albaz to the graveyard. You'll summon the Rinbrum to your side of the field in the extra monster zone, and this will trigger Yellow Martin's effect to add Masquerade to your hand. When going second, this line becomes kind of good because you can use it to search for the Lunaligh Fusion, and then if you have extra names in your hand, you can kind of activate the Lunaligh Fusion to cheat out a Liger while using the Rinbrum to negate something that may negate your Lunaligh Fusion. So we'll activate the Masquerade. We'll then use its effect to send the Silverhound. Of course, if our opponent rolled after we searched this, that'll have been the end of our turn. So we'll now use the effect of Silverhound and we'll summon out Yugioh to our side of the field. Again, using the effect to search for a Collider Chick. And then you want to discard from your hand. In this case, it happens to be Thrust. You'll normal the Collider Chick to your side of the field. You'll use its effect to send Black Sheep to graveyard. You'll then use the effect of Yugioh to add the Black Sheep back to hand. Use the effect again to search, use the effect of Black Sheep to search for polymerization. And of course you're going to add polymerization to hand, and then from this position you want to fuse using your 2 monsters on your side of the field. So we'll go into a Perfume Dancer. And from here we can activate a few effects. So it doesn't really matter when we use the Masquerade's effect, so I'm just going to we'll use that a bit later when we get the Leo Dancer, so it doesn't matter. So we'll use the effect of Perfume Dancer now, and then the effect of Collider Chick to add polymerization from our grave to our hand. We'll then search out the Lunaligh Perfume. And then you want to use the Perfume to summon out Collider Chick from your graveyard. Use the effect of Collider Chick. In this case, because we already have the Yellow Martin in the graveyard, we just want to send both Leo Dancers to the graveyard or a Leo Dancer and another fusion. So I think it's safest to send 2 Leo Dancer because, like I said, if your opponent has a Bastille, you kind of cooked otherwise. So We'll use the effect again, and this time you can either send a Panther Dancer if you're okay ending on a Leo Dancer should you get negated, but I mean, why do that when you can just send the Leo Dancer straight? So if your opponent does Bastille you now, you are safe and you will be getting to your second copy of Liger, or to your one copy of Liger in this case. So we'll then use the effect of Perfume to pitch the Polymerization to add Wolf to hand. You'll activate Wolf, and you want to use Wolf's effect to fusion summon out your Liger to your side of the field. We will be banishing the Collider Chick, Gold Leo, Black Sheep, and one of your 2 Leo Dancers. And then, like I said, it's just funnier to summon it to the Anima Zone, so we'll summon the Liger over there. And from this position, we can activate the Grave effect, or the effect to add a Polymerization from the grave to hand off of Masquerade. So we'll add the Polymerization to our hand, and okay, so this kind of didn't change the endboard too much, except that it kind of did, because we already have the Spell Trap Negate live, because considering we have the Leo Dancer in the graveyard with the Silver Hound, and we were able to get a card in our hand for the Albaz Contact Fusion, should our opponent get rid of the Rim Room on our side of the field. So it does change it slightly. I don't know if it's worth risking a draw for, but I guess during game 1 when your opponent hasn't probably sided the draw in, you can kind of get away with doing this instead.